Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for April 24th through 30th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 3 shows, I watched 3 movies, and I listened to 3 books. Additionally, this is the second video you're getting from me today because I participated in One Scene for Hope. If you haven't seen that video already, I will link it down below, but essentially a bunch of YouTube creators got together and talked about a piece of media that had a scene in it that really meant hopeful things for them, and it's all explained in that video, so I'll just let you go check it out. The premiere of that video actually happened while I was setting up to make this video, so I definitely did a little bit of dancing in front of the camera while trying to figure out exactly how to place it because I don't have a viewfinder. That happened. The first book I finished this week is One for All. This is a book that takes place in France in the 1600s. When the main character was about 12, she started getting dizzy spells. She has what we would know today as POTS, but obviously they didn't have that terminology in the 1600s in France. And her father used to be a musketeer for the king, so he has taught her fencing from a very young age. As most mothers of this time frame were obsessed with getting their daughters married off, her mother is no different. However, society has told her that that is unlikely and she doesn't actually really care all that much about that aspect of things. Due to some plot points that I'm not going to wreck for you, she ends up going to a school and then she ends up maybe using her skills for good. If you've heard anyone talk about this, you've probably heard them talk about the fact that it is a gender-bent retelling of The Three Musketeers. I think this might be a continuation, although I've never actually read The Three Musketeers. I've never even seen a movie of The Three Musketeers, although I have seen The Man in the Iron Mask, which is apparently a sequel to The Three Musketeers. I didn't know that until I accidentally looked it up the other day. So I would have to go back and check, but I have a feeling that her father was one of the Three Musketeers. But don't quote me on that because I don't actually know. I haven't actually looked it up. I really enjoyed this not only because of the disability rep, but because we got some great characters, we had some interesting situations, we had some mysteries to solve, we had intrigue. I very much enjoyed this book. I am so happy that my friend Anna sent me a copy for my birthday. Thank you again, Anna. It was wonderful. I'm also not doing the greatest at participating in readathons this year, and this is definitely the book that I wanted to read for the Disability Readathon, which just finished yesterday. I'll talk more about some readathon plans in a few days, though. The other book I read this week was an advanced reader's copy of I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I was very excited to get to this book despite the fact that I knew literally nothing about it besides what the cover looked like and the fact that it was YA. That's right, folks, when I've read somebody's writing and I've loved it before, I like to go into their books not knowing anything about the plot. Which means if you are the same, you're going to want to skip forward maybe 20 seconds. I don't know how long it's going to take me to summarize this. In this book, our main character is Chloe. She is mortal enemies with this girl named Shara Wheeler. They are both neck and neck to be valedictorian, and they have been ever since they started high school together at this Christian academy in Alabama where Shara seems to be treated like royalty because her dad's the principal. She's super pretty, everybody loves her, and Chloe hates this. However, as the book starts out, a few days ago, Shara kissed her out of nowhere and she has no idea how to feel about that, and now she's just disappeared and she's all anyone can talk about. This means that Chloe's decided to figure out where she went, because if she's just throwing the valedictorian race, that's not how Chloe wants to win. Chloe wants to win against the best. From there, a couple of other people get dragged into her quest to find Shara, including Shara's boyfriend, as well as her next-door neighbor. This one is full of puzzles and deception and great side characters and things that are going on in her life that she's ignoring because she's trying to do this quest. And overall, I had a fantastic time being along for this ride. There were definitely scenes in this where I was like, they need to make this into a movie. I think that that could happen, and I think that I would be so on board to watch it. This book is out on Tuesday, so your wait is not very long, and if you're anything like me, you're going to very much enjoy this one. On to the TV shows I watched. The second season of Russian Doll dropped, so we just watched all of it, which is pretty easy to do actually because the episodes are only about 30 minutes long. This is a show that's a little bit difficult to talk about because it's a little bit timey-wimey, and especially because we're into the second season, I don't really want to destroy too many plot points for you. However, this takes place about 4 years after the first season, and the main character is about to turn 40, and she has a little bit of trauma to do with her birthdays, which you will know from the first season because the first season took place, I believe, on her 36th birthday over and over and over again. However, this season approaches time travel a little bit differently, and she gets caught up in all of that, and that's about all I can tell you without major spoilers. This was interesting. Time travel situations are always a little bit of a what the hell did I just watch type of situation, but I enjoyed meeting both new characters and old characters in different situations, and that's all I can tell you. I was over at my best friend, so we also finished the second season of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and my goodness, I really love this show. I really love the characters getting on each other's nerves and all of those types of things. I feel very sorry for one particular character by the end of this season, which again, I can't tell you because it's the end of a season. I'm not going to do that to you. This show is super witty, quick-paced, and I really like the character growth that I've seen, and I'm very excited for what's happening in the next season. The second half of the fourth season of Ozark also dropped, so we watched the first 3 episodes of that, which means we have 3 episodes left, and then I think that's it. Because this half-season drop situation, I think, is because the production company wanted another season, but the writers were like, well, we can't really do it, so like, let's drop half a season at a time, and then it'll feel like 5 seasons, but it's really still just 4. Or something like that. I don't know who is on which side of which, but I hope that at the end of the next 3 episodes we're going to get a very nice resolution. That would be great. A lot of things, even in this section, are starting to come really full circle from previous events, so there's that. And I am just endlessly interested to see how these characters are going to end up versus how they were at the very beginning of the show. On to the movies I watched this week. I watched Man Up, which was a rewatch, although I didn't realize it because I had forgotten I had seen this movie before, until I started watching it and went, oh yes, all of this is very familiar. Oh yes, I see where this is going. This is a romantic comedy about this girl who's in her mid-30s, and she doesn't really put herself out there, and all the people in her life tell her that she should be doing that, and that she should do spontaneous things and all of that. And she meets this girl on a train who's got this book about just doing that type of thing, and she falls asleep on the train, and when she wakes up, the girl has left her the book, and she's like, hell no, I don't want this book, I'm gonna go find this girl. So she runs to find the girl in the train station, and the girl is actually on the way to buy another copy of that book because she's about to go on a blind date, and the book is how he's meant to identify her. And instead of the train girl ending up going on this blind date with Simon Pegg, who ends up being the male lead of this movie, he mistakes her, because she has the book, for his date, so they go on a date. And she has to pretend to be this person that she met on the train because she's like, you know what, why not? This guy seems interested, let's do it. Not without its problems, but it definitely has moments that are very amusing. The guy that played Sean, who works in the bowling alley, if you've ever seen this, is also Frankenstein's monster from Penny Dreadful, so that's just an extra layer of creepy to me. This had a lot of cringy situations, but somehow it worked. We also watched Smokin' Aces, which I cannot super recommend. This is one of those cases where a cast can be amazing, but that doesn't mean it's going to be a good movie. A weird crossover with this one from movies we watched last week. The lead character in Kinky Boots plays a Russian guy in this one. This one is basically an FBI sting to take down a mob boss, but there's way too many characters, way too many people who want to take down this one guy, because if they take down this guy, then they won't get the mob information, and there's this, and double crosses, and fake identities, and things. I was looking for an action comedy. I told my TV I wanted an action comedy. This had a little bit of action and a little bit of comedy, and never really all together, and yeah, way too many characters. And somehow they made a sequel. I haven't seen it. I don't think I will. We also watched a movie that I had never seen before, but is from Chad's childhood, and that is called Uncle Buck. In this movie, John Candy plays the titular character and has to babysit his nieces and nephew, and he hasn't really seen them for a while. This basically felt like a run-up to Home Alone a little bit to me, but that's mostly because this was made the year before Macaulay Culkin made Home Alone, and you can see a lot of the same characteristics used in these two children characters. This had some really great funny moments. It was interesting to me how he walked right into being a stereotypical dad of a teenager, right down to threatening the teenage daughter's boyfriend. He also was just doing his best, and he had a lot of heart, and this was amusing. On to the 3 audiobooks that I listened to this week, because I've been cross-stitching, and this means that I can still consume books while doing that. The first one is Unprotected by Billy Porter. This is his memoir, and it is fantastic. Also, if audiobooks are accessible to you, Billy Porter reads it himself, and occasionally he just bursts out into song, because why not? He's Billy Porter, he can do what he wants. Being a memoir, this is all about him growing up, different roles he's had, all of those types of things. There are definitely some trigger warnings going into this, but it always feels weird to talk about trigger warnings for somebody's actual life. So as I've said before, I have links down below where you can check out trigger warnings for anything I talk about. Billy definitely had a difficult upbringing. A lot of it was repressed for quite some time. Some of it is also continuous trauma, and he was definitely writing this book during the global situation that we're having right now, so he had a lot of time to unpack those feelings. And one of the most fun things for me was occasionally he would talk about either an outfit he wore for a thing, or he would talk about a performance he did on television, and it was very fun to me to pause the book and look up the outfit or look up the performance. It just felt like such an immersive experience. For example, did you know that he had an R&B career where he was actually butched up for the music videos? Did you know that he played the teen angel in Grease? And did you know, and I'm still mad about this, but that there was a time frame where he might have played the witch in Into the Woods on Broadway and it didn't happen, and I'm still mad about it? This was fantastic. Even if you don't know all that much about Billy Porter, you should listen to these memoirs. Next, I listened to A Kind of Spark. This is about a girl who lives in a small village just outside of Edinburgh in the UK. Sometime within the last couple of years, she's been diagnosed as being autistic, and her best friend of childhood has kind of moved away from her, and that's causing her a little bit of pain, obviously. Her best friend is also now aligned with this bully who is just really mean to her at all times. And now at the beginning of a new school year, she has a new teacher who is just not great. In fact, her older sister, who was also autistic, had this teacher when she was in school, and she was mean to her as well. In the lead up to Halloween in Samhain, they go on a class trip and they learn about witches. In fact, their village had the most women who were accused of being witches, and they were executed for that, and that's something that really resonates with our main character, because she's like, these people were just seen as different. I'm seen as different, so if I existed back then, I would have been killed for being a witch. She then decides that it's ridiculous that the town doesn't have a plaque or a memorial for these women, and starts going to town meetings to make that happen. Now, this book has a special place in my heart because I actually used to live in Edinburgh and I used to be a tour guide there, and I used to talk about the witch trials because that's something you can't avoid in the history of that city. However, the only place you're really going to find anything about it is this very tiny plaque facing the esplanade in front of the castle. And on that plaque, I can't remember exactly what it says. If I still have a picture of it, I'll put it up. But essentially it says a lot of witches were burned at the stake here or near to here, and the plaque doesn't mention the fact that they weren't actually witches, that they were innocent women, nothing like that. Just, you know, we burned a lot of witches to death here. Or we threw them in the Norloch, and if they floated, they were witches, and if they sunk, well, you know, that's a good Christian death. For obvious reasons, this always pissed me off, but because it's history, it feels far removed, so it becomes this fun story that you tell when you're tour guiding, like, oh, do you know the signs of a witch? Red hair, you know, not 4% of the planet has that. Or a birthmark, I'm pretty sure a bunch of people have that as well. Or, you know, a third nipple, and I believe somebody on one of our tours had all three of those, so I'm sure they felt really uncomfortable at that moment. The narrator of this audiobook had a great Scottish accent that made me miss Edinburgh all the more, and Scotland in general, so it was wonderful to revisit even under these circumstances. The final audiobook I listened to this week is When We Lost Our Heads by Heather O'Neill. This is a book that takes place in Montreal in the 1800s during the Industrial Revolution, and it has a whole cast of characters and it spans about 20 years. However, it starts out focusing on Marie and Sadie. We meet these two characters and they kind of seem like an opposites attract situation. Sadie is kind of that goth child of the time, but she takes it a little bit too far. She might have some sociopathic tendencies. And then Marie is this upbeat, lovely, whatever type of child whose father owns a sugar factory that was inherited to him once his wife died, and she's going to actually own the factory when he dies. They seem like an unlikely pairing, but once they get together, they create this own little world that only the two of them are a part of. And because I watched a 3-video series about it, it could only make me think of the two girls that killed one of their mothers in New Zealand, that kind of hardcore relationship. Which I cannot believe one of them was Anne Perry. I'm gonna have to read an Anne Perry book. Anyway, something happens in this book that separates these two girls, and then we see the fallout of that as well as what happens when they grow up from several different points of view, and then by the end of this, nobody is really exactly who you thought they were. This is a book about class and industrialization, and those at the top not seeing the people at the bottom as people. This also had a little bit to do with the English versus the French, but not all that much. And then I don't know what the ethnic makeup of Montreal at this time frame would have been, but also race wasn't something that was really brought into this. However, queerness definitely was. There's a whole pile of queerness in this book. So that was a delightful surprise. I knew nothing about this book going into it. I'm not entirely sure why I put it on my list from the library, but it came up as a hold and I went, okay, sure, whatever this is, I'll listen to it. I have a feeling it might have been Leanne who talked about it, but honestly, I don't remember. I probably just heard, hey, this is set in my country, and went, yeah, it's probably something I should read. Hence why I put it on the list. This was an overall sweeping narrative. You actually got into the minds of a lot of different characters, and I ended up very much enjoying that. Sometimes a book can have too many characters, but I don't feel like this went over that line. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you're here, just leave an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!